What happens when the man sworn to protect a president turns against him? Trump and Bolton's alliance didn't just break, it detonated. This is one of Washington's fiercest feuds, and now you'll see the full timeline of every twist and fact in their clash. In March 2018, Donald Trump appointed John Bolton as National Security Advisor. Bolton was a veteran of Republican administrations, having served as U.S. Ambassador to the UN under George W. Bush and in senior roles at the State Department. Before joining Trump, he worked at the American Enterprise Institute and as a lawyer. While remaining a prominent conservative voice, Trump praised him as a tough guy who would bring clarity to foreign policy. And at first, the two appeared united in projecting strength and pushing an America First agenda. For a while, the partnership looked stable. Bolton pressed for maximum pressure campaigns, especially against Iran, while Trump enjoyed the image of surrounding himself with strong personalities. Trump would tell reporters that Bolton was a tough cookie who knew how to get things done, and in those early months, their goals often overlapped. The White House presented a united front, portraying Bolton as a man who would back the president's instincts with hardline strategy. But behind the scenes, the seeds of conflict were already being planted. By the end of 2018, serious cracks began to show. One of the biggest points of friction was North Korea. Trump saw a historic opportunity to meet directly with Kim Jong-un, convinced he could secure a deal that would make headlines around the world. Bolton, however, remained deeply skeptical. He urged caution, warning that North Korea had played this game before, promising concessions while continuing to build its arsenal. Their approaches clashed. Trump wanted a handshake and a breakthrough, while Bolton wanted pressure and isolation. The tension between diplomacy and hardline policy became impossible to ignore. The disagreements did not end there. On Afghanistan, Trump repeatedly pushed to bring U.S. troops home, eager to fulfill a campaign promise and prove he was winding down forever wars. Bolton resisted, arguing that withdrawals would embolden the Taliban and weaken America's global credibility. Similar disputes arose over Iran, Venezuela, and even Russia. Slowly but surely, their relationship shifted from partnership to open frustration. Accounts from insiders described heated meetings and visible irritation from both men as they fought over the president's most consequential decisions. By September of 2019, the partnership had collapsed entirely. Bolton handed in his resignation, though Trump insisted he had been fired. The president announced the departure on Twitter, telling the world that he had disagreed strongly with many of Bolton's ideas. Bolton, for his part, suggested that he had chosen to leave, unwilling to continue working under conditions that clashed with his beliefs. Regardless of the details, the break was final. The man once brought in as Trump's national security bulldog was now cast aside as another fallen member of the president's inner circle. The real turning point, however, came in 2020, when Bolton published his memoir, The Room Where It Happened. In its pages, Bolton painted a devastating picture of Trump as uninformed, easily manipulated by foreign leaders, and more focused on personal political gain than on national interest. He accused Trump of seeking favors from China and of making major policy decisions without understanding even the basics of global affairs. The White House moved aggressively to block the book's release, filing lawsuits and arguing it contained classified information, but the efforts failed. The book hit store shelves quickly, topping bestseller lists and fueling endless news coverage. Bolton's portrayal of Trump was damning. He wrote that he struggled to identify a single major accomplishment during Trump's time in office. To Trump's critics, the book confirmed their worst fears. To Trump's supporters, it was proof that yet another disloyal insider was cashing in. But either way, the relationship between the two men was not just broken, it was hostile. Bolton was invited on television shows, speaking openly about his opposition to Trump. The president, in turn, fired back with insults, branding him a wacko and a dope, someone who never really understood what was happening. The feud grew more personal as months passed. Bolton framed himself as a truth teller, a man willing to expose what he called dangerous incompetence inside the White House. Trump dismissed him as irrelevant, saying Bolton only wanted to sell books and that he had begged for his job in the first place. What had begun as a disagreement over policy had transformed into a bitter public rivalry, playing out across headlines, interviews, and social media. Then came August of 2025, when the conflict took a dramatic new twist. An article by Bolton PAC staff was published highlighting that Trump was perceived as favoring China over India on trade. A point of geopolitical concern, this indicates an ongoing critical stance from Bolton's camp against Trump's foreign policy decisions. August 10, 2025. In an interview, John Bolton told ABC News' Jonathan Karl that he believed President Donald Trump was running a retribution presidency and had already come after him by withdrawing his protection from Iranian threats. The statement was made 12 days before the FBI raid. August 11, 2025. Articles by Bolton PAC staff published in The Daily Telegraph and Economist expressed deep skepticism about Trump's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, describing it as a major propaganda victory for Putin and a potential fait accompli for Ukraine, which would involve ceding Ukrainian territory. Bolton also warned that the North had become NATO's soft underbelly due to rising threats from China and Russia, with America's military resources being wholly inadequate. August 13, 2025. President Trump publicly criticized Bolton on Truth Social, calling him really dumb, reportedly irked by Bolton's critical comments ahead of the Alaska summit with Putin. August 22, 2025. Friday morning, FBI agents raided John Bolton's Maryland home around 7 a.m. ET, followed a couple of hours later by a raid on his Washington, D.C. office. Bolton was present at his office as authorities removed documents, but was not under arrest, facing charges, or in custody. Multiple sources indicated the raids were related to concerns over Bolton potentially having stored classified documents he shouldn't have. News outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post reported the search was to determine if he had illegally shared or possessed classified information. FBI Director Kash Patel posted on X around the raids, stating no one is above the law at FBI agents on mission, without explicitly mentioning Bolton. Attorney General Pam Bondi later echoed this sentiment, posting, "America's safety isn't negotiable. Justice will be pursued always." President Trump reacted publicly to the news, stating he saw it on television this morning and denied advance knowledge of the raid. He reiterated his strong negative opinion of Bolton, calling him a real sort of a lowlife and not a smart guy, and suggesting he could be a very unpatriotic guy. He also remarked, "My house was raided also, so I know the feeling. It's not a good feeling." He suggested he could have been the one starting it as the chief law enforcement officer, but chose to not get involved directly. August 22nd, Friday afternoon, Vice President J.D. Vance, speaking on Meet the Press, confirmed that the raid was part of the very early stages of an ongoing investigation into John Bolton related to classified documents and a broad concern about Ambassador Bolton. He insisted that law enforcement agencies would be driven by law and not by politics. August 23rd, news outlets reported on the ongoing reactions to the raid, including concerns from conservative media outlets. For example, the Wall Street Journal's editorial board called the raid vindictive, stating it reeks of political vengeance and that Trump seems to think he can use the powers of his office to run vendettas. Former FBI Assistant Director Chris Wicker expressed skepticism, stating, "Just because you have the authority and discretion to do something like this doesn't mean you should do it." The ongoing investigation into John Bolton's alleged mishandling of classified documents from his 2020 memoir could lead to formal criminal charges if sufficient evidence is uncovered, with supporters emphasizing the principle that no one is above the law. Alternatively, critics may continue to view the incident as a politically motivated act of retribution by the Trump administration against a vocal opponent, possibly without charges, as part of a broader campaign to target perceived enemies.